let us go to another individual who was there in Riyadh on Saturday, big part of PFL, big part of PFL Europe as well. The Outlaw, Dan Hardy, is here with us, and he is joining us from New York as he is helping his wife, Veronica, prepare for her next bout. Hello, Dan. How are you?
I'm good, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. Welcome back to America. How is Veronica doing? How are things going as you guys are preparing for her next fight?
Yeah, she's doing really well. You know, we were fortunate to get a couple of months out here before the fight was even offered to her to just kind of work on her overall technical game, and she's really progressed very quickly over the last few weeks. And then nipped back to England for a few weeks of sparring, and then we've been back out here for a week. So I'm excited for this one. I think she's going to show a new level to her game.
She continues to get better. She continues to evolve, and it's great to see. And obviously, you're a big part of that as well. You're a big part of what PFL is doing. You were great on the broadcast on Saturday. It was a big week for you guys. And I'm just wondering, overall, when you take like the sort of zoomed out look at the event, the production, how it all looked, how it all felt, as someone who is not just a part of the broadcast, but on the operations side, so to speak, how did you feel it all went down in Riyadh?
I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I think there are going to be a couple of fighters that will look back on their performances and be frustrated. But aside from that, I thought overall the show was good. And I mean, honestly, all the way through fight week, and I'm sure that you were discussing this as well, there was real jeopardy with the Renan Ferreira opponent for Francis. And with the weight that he was carrying, which was quite obvious, even though he carried it so well, you've got to imagine the pain and the emotion that he was carrying with him, and trying to set to one side to remain focused, and then right at the end, obviously, with him to win so emphatically and then have that outpouring of emotion. Like all three of us, myself, Sean, and Randy cage side, we were just about holding it together.
Wow.
It was a real challenge. So it was a bit of a fairy tale ending really for Francis, and probably not the end of the Francis Ngannou movie, but certainly one of the highlights when we come back to watch it in a few years once it's been made.
What were you feeling? What were you thinking before the fight? How did you think it was going to go?
I could just picture several different ways of it ending. I thought it was going to be quite a tentative start, to be honest. When I saw Francis working those body kicks, I actually said it on the broadcast. He was working body kicks against, with Dewey Cooper on the body shield. And I thought to myself, he might be thinking about a low kick game just to destabilize Renan Ferreira. But the real danger for Ngannou was kind of being overexcited and anxious and rushing in straight onto that right hand of Ferreira. I mean, that's what we saw Goltsov do. We saw Ryan Bader do the same thing. And I kind of thought to myself, with the pressure, with the timeout of mixed martial arts and the excitement of, let's get going. I thought Ngannou might pull the trigger too soon and run onto that, and not necessarily knock him out, but certainly put him in a bit of turmoil for a moment. But I thought he looked very clean. I thought his takedown was well timed. He drew on the feint and forced Renan Ferreira to throw that right hand, so he committed and was able to take him down easily. And what I will say is, Ferreira's triangle attempt was very impressive. That really surprised me. So we can still see that he's developing as a fighter. I still think his peak's ahead of him. But on the night, Francis was the man.
I've done hours upon hours of shows since the fight, and I haven't brought up one thing that a lot of people keep hitting me up about. And so let me ask you, since you were there cage side, some were upset that the fight went a little too long, that Miragliotta should have stopped it sooner. Did Renan, in your opinion, take too much damage?
I will say it's always difficult, isn't it? Because, Dan's a solid referee. He refereed my UFC debut and, was right in there when Akihiro Gono kneed me illegally in the side of the head. I'll be honest, I don't remember the rest of the fight from that point, from that knee. And Dan did a good job of getting in there and protecting me in that moment. But, I would say there were probably two punches that were a little bit too late for me. It's just, especially when you see somebody that's kind of they're in a position where they're buckled already. Like Ferreira, he was still on his knees, so it was difficult to judge what was going on in his face. But for me, the power in those punches and the way that his body moved for the last couple before he bellied out, that was the final. As soon as someone bellies down, same with CB Dollaway when he had that fight against, was it Murtala Ali? Well, I butchered that name, but you remember the fight. as soon as you see a fighter belly down like that, it's immediately game over. I don't think this, like, we should just get straight in there at that point. You know, they were powerful punches. I will say that.
Oh my gosh, there's one clip of them like up close to the cage, and it just looks, it's terrifying. The sounds, the ferocity, the power, the speed. It's all very, very impressive. And we saw in 3 minutes and 32 seconds, we saw like the complete game from Francis. And that's why it's been so long. It's been almost 3 years since we saw him in MMA. There's a part of me that understands if he wants to go back and box because of the paydays, because of the buzz and everything that comes with it, because of the challenge that comes with it. But there is a part of me that, as he's getting up there in age, I want to see him continue to evolve in MMA and see how much he can get better. Where are you leaning in terms of, like, if you were part of Team Francis, what would you like to see him do?
I mean, honestly, I would be open to the options. I think there are some really interesting boxing matches out there for him if that's what he decides to do. I saw, for whatever reason, the name Rika Verhoeven floating around today as well on social media. So
I brought that up.
Well, thank you for that, because that's got my brain spinning in lots of different directions.
You like it? You like it?
I think it would be fascinating. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would prefer to see Francis in mixed martial arts. I think that's where he's at his best, when he has his whole skill set at his disposal. But, you know, the reality is we need to try and find people who want to fight him. What I will say is we've got Goltsov v Popov coming up, and I think that's a very interesting one. We've also got Nemkov, who's a rather undersized heavyweight, but that's worked out for some good fighters in the past, and he's very technical. You know, I think there are some interesting fights out there for him. I think the most important thing for Francis, if I'm his team, I'm going activity. Like, let's stay active. What is he, 38 now?
Yeah, just turned 38.
I think, and heavyweights do peak later. You know, I'm sure you and I have had this conversation before. I think wisdom goes a lot further in the heavyweight division because, you know, slightly less happens and the margin for error is, you know, much greater. So, you know, I feel like we've probably still got another 2 or 3 years of Francis being, really at his peak. And it doesn't mean to say that he couldn't fight into his 40s, absolutely, especially if he keeps himself healthy. But certainly over the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to get the best years of him, I think.
If it's MMA, I like the Nemkov fight the best. If it's boxing, I guess Deontay Wilder, even though he's somewhat of a shell of his former self, that's just kind of a fun fight. But I brought up Rico because it's like the king of kickboxing, the king of MMA, and then they meet in boxing, neutral ground. Glory, your old friend Marshall Zlaznik, they're interested. They've hit us up. Rico hit me up as well. I think, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I should take 5% or 10%. I'm still trying to figure that out. But there's something, I don't know. I'm intrigued by it. And they've trained together in the past too.
Yeah, interesting. You know, I'm always open to heavyweights. They can come out of nowhere, right? You know, all of a sudden there's a guy on the scene that you've never heard of before. I mean, for a lot of people, Tom Aspinall did that, right?
Yeah.
You know, we've got to keep our eyes open. And, you know, with what Alex Pereira's done in mixed martial arts, with very little experience in the sport, you know, heavyweight is a very, very unique weight class, I think. And anything's possible. People can come out of nowhere. So I'm always open to options.
Your mate, Pete Carroll, keeps trying to push the Phil DeFries Francis Ngannou fight. Do you have interest in this?
Absolutely. You know, Phil is a formidable heavyweight. I think it's been several years since he's been beaten. Yeah, absolutely would be a very interesting one.
Okay, speaking of Pete, he was the first person to ever tell me about Paul Hughes. He's been talking about Paul Hughes for quite some time. You guys had a great chat on his show last week, and he wrote a great story about Paul. And correct me if I've gotten this story wrong. When the idea of Paul fighting AJ McKee was first brought to your attention, was there any part of you that was like, is this a little too soon for Paul? Is that accurate? And if it is accurate, now what do you think about how he did on Saturday?
Yeah, absolutely. I did. You know, I mean, the global fighter ops team handled all the pay-per-view matchmaking and stuff. And I remember when I first saw that match on the card, my heart jumped for a little bit because obviously I've followed Paul Hughes' career up until this point quite closely. And, you know, I was a big advocate for us getting him on the roster. And I just kind of felt like, you know, it was, I mean, AJ McKee is such a dangerous opponent, right? He's been fighting at such an elite level for so long, and I was wondering honestly, and I completely underestimated Paul. He absolutely leveled up. You know, he proved me wrong as well as a lot of others. I was more anxious for him than doubting. Like, I know he's got the skills to do it because I've seen him utilize those skills, but there's a difference between applying them against everybody that he'd fought up to that point and applying them against AJ McKee. And the last time I remember see AJ McKee in Riyadh, he went through Clay Collard much, much quicker than I was expecting. And I have a lot of respect for Clay Collard and his toughness and wisdom and durability. So I definitely thought it was a jump up, and I was very, very impressed. For me, and I've said this before, it was a career defining performance. Like, he leveled up to a point where, you know, he didn't even look like the fighter that we saw in Dublin. I thought he was a very different fighter entirely.
And so with that in mind, I know he signed up to be a part of the tournament, but I would love to see that Usman fight. And there's a part of me 6 months ago that said, you know, when he was hinting at it, but now I feel like it would be tremendous. Do you think there's a chance we get that before he goes into the tournament?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the best thing for him to do right now is to ride the crest of this wave, the momentum that he's on, the performance that he put in against AJ McKee. And you and I know this very well. Momentum is a lot in mixed martial arts because it feeds into confidence. Confidence is a big part of someone having an effective performance. And I feel like, you know, now's the time for him to really put his foot on the gas and see what he's capable of. Like, he might be way more capable than any of us are giving him credit for, him, including himself. But it's going to be someone like Nurmagomedov that he's going to really push him and take him to that level. I mean, honestly, I thought AJ McKee was going to be able to do that, but because he didn't, let's level up again. You know, let's see where he goes next. And you know, and if it is a step too far, then there are still plenty of other options for him because he's still under 15 fights in his career. You know, there's still a lot of time ahead of him. But absolutely, right now, I don't think any of us can underestimate him anymore.
How would you assess Johnny Eblen? I feel like a little over a year ago, we were having the discussion, is he the best middleweight, or could he beat the UFC's middleweight champion? And truth be told, I feel like some of that talk has cooled off a little bit. I think it's always tough when a champion has to fight a challenger twice and he's coming off a win over him and then do it again a year later. He has to kind of figure out a new way to figure out the puzzle. The other guy just has to try to beat the guy who we've seen as champion for the last few fights. Now that you've seen him again against Fabian, how would you assess where he's at and in particular his performance on Saturday?
Well, I mean, you know, certainly the first 20 minutes of the fight were very, very impressive. You know, it wasn't until the last round where I felt like, you know, Eblen's efforts up to that point had started to, you know, take a toll on his conditioning. And obviously Fabian probably felt like he was, you know, 4 rounds down and needed to do something special. Honestly, I think he's got all the skills to beat any middleweight on the planet. I really do. I think the only thing that he really lacks, and it was kind of interesting because I did a face-off with them earlier in the week. You know, Fabian and Eblen sat across the table, and you know, sometimes they can get quite fiery. Like, I remember doing the Darren Till Masvidal one a few years ago, and you know, the Lewis McGrill and Dean Garnett one was really, really fun as well. And both of these guys, they were quite, you know, they're quite analytical, they're quite sensible, they're quite logical, they're quite respectful of one another. And it, you know, it's not that that's a bad thing necessarily, but I think certainly in the modern day, people respond to confidence and sometimes bravado. And I think that's maybe the thing. Like, if Eblen was going, I'm the best middleweight on the planet, and I dare you to try and prove me wrong, I think a lot of other people would start to echo that sentiment. And I think it's his willingness to kind of go, you know, to put himself among the best middleweights on the planet. I mean, that, you know, the performance against Fabian was dominant. You know, Fabian showed really good takedown defense in the first fight, and Eblen solved that problem. He dominated for 20 minutes. I think that's the next thing that he needs. He needs to be able to start saying to people, I'm the man, and prove me wrong.
Do you fancy his chances against the best in the UFC, the DDPs of the world, the Stricklands of the world?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, I know he's good friends with Strickland, so he never seems to like to, you know, to talk about where they compare with one another, but he certainly puts himself on a level with Strickland. Now, the reality is anyone that's got wrestling like Eblen is going to be problematic. And it gives him confidence to strike. I think because he had to lean into his striking more against Fabian, I think he's grown in confidence there as well. I just think, honestly, I think he needs to make the statement for himself, and people will start to believe him. Because, you know, you name any middleweight on any roster, I think Eblen's got a damn good chance of dragging him into deep water and either knocking him out or just, you know, just mauling them until the final bell.
What about Cris Cyborg making her debut almost 20 years ago and still doing this, winning her fifth promotional belt and having to dig down deep, right? She gets the cut. Pacheco is a freaking beast, taking her best shots. I was thoroughly impressed. And I didn't think it was a hard fight to score in the end. I thought she won off the top of my head now. I think it was maybe 3-2 or 4-1, but I was just blown away, especially when she hasn't been as active in MMA these days. I was blown away by the performance. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think a lot of people were looking past Larissa Pacheco coming into this one, much like they were Renan Ferreira. The people that have been watching Pacheco realize how dangerous she is. I mean, she's very powerful. She's very well rounded, and with Cyborg, I mean, she's such a tough, durable fighter. She's very much in the pocket. She takes a lot of risks. She really opens herself up in her game, and that's one of the reasons why she's got such a big fan base. The thing that was most impressive, I think, was coming through that adversity. There are a lot of fighters, especially with the reputation of Cyborg, even if she comes out of those rounds with more damage than her opponent, but she's still dominated. I mean, I agree with you. I thought Cyborg, I remember on the night, I was thinking to myself, I feel like Cyborg's taken the first and second. Then I was feeling like Larissa Pacheco had taken the third and fourth, just purely because she landed some better shots. And I felt like she came off better in some of those exchanges. I mean, if I watched it back, I may see it slightly differently, but that was certainly my feeling sitting cage side at the time, potentially going into the third round, into the fifth round completely even. And Cyborg was the one that was bloodied, bleeding over and cut over both eyes. I thought the corner team did a great job to keep her in the fight as well, because, one of those in particular was in a very bad spot. And I just think she showed her championship quality. But I also think, if we look at the fight realistically, in 12 months' time, it could have gone the opposite way. I think Larissa Pacheco is certainly on the rise, and I think she's definitely the person to take Cyborg's place when, Cyborg does eventually step aside.
When did you start with PFL? How long ago was it?
That's a good question. End of 2022, I think.
Okay, so end of 2022. So is my math correct? Like a little over a year to almost 2 years? Yeah?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. How's it going? How are you enjoying this?
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I mean, every day, the thing I've realized about myself, honestly, is obviously when I was just doing the commentary and analysis, I was focused on, this is the next fight card. These are the block of fighters that I've got to focus on. Whereas now, obviously, I'm doing a few different things, and I'm on a fighter ops call, and then I'm on a PFL Europe team call about the next event coming up, and I'm just having to switch gears and change is a very interesting challenge for me. I'm enjoying it because I'm getting to work with a lot of different people and people in different specialties that I'm learning from, and also meeting cool people as well. Like I met Ray Lewis this weekend. Was awesome. I mean, that guy. I said it to the guys before we started broadcasting. I used to listen to his team speeches before like hard conditioning sessions or sparring sessions just to get me fired up. And then sat next to Greg Rosetsky on the plane on the way back to Doha, and we literally just talked for an hour. He was fascinating, really interesting guy. So these are the opportunities I'm really enjoying, and it's challenging me. I feel like I'm growing, and that's always a positive thing.
As far as the challenges, like what new role or what new part of your role do you enjoy the most?
Certainly trying to manage the roster and balance the right talent on the roster and keep them active. That's the thing I'm enjoying the most, because there are so many good fighters out there. What I really want to do is build PFL Europe, certainly, which is the piece that I'm working at the moment. Build it into a broader and more stable platform, because there are so many fighters across Europe that need activity. And unfortunately, there's just not enough shows. There are shows that pop up and spend a bunch of cash and then they disappear, or there are other shows that are consistent but they don't really pay anything. And it's a challenge to kind of find that right balance. And some fighters' expectations are really difficult to manage as well, because they see what such and such is making and how much they're getting from this and that, and and it's difficult because not all fighters resonate with the fans in the same way. So managing expectations of fighters is a new challenge for me as well.
Oh man.
But at the same time, it's good because I can see a difference I can make in a lot of these young fighters' careers, creating opportunities for them. And I want everyone to look at one of my PFL Europe cards and go, you know what? There's not a single fighter on that card that is not fully capable of winning their fight in front of them. And I pride myself in that kind of matchmaking.
So you're so busy these days because you're at the events, you're putting together events, you're calling fights, you're coaching Veronica. Are we going to get a 308 breakdown from you, or too busy for that one on the YouTube channel?
I've been very, very disappointed in myself. I've just not had the time. The Raptors are off doing other things as well now. James Mystery's doing awesome work. Jamie Allsop's off doing other things. Got a cool job, and so I'm kind of, when I start doing that stuff back, I'm going to be doing it on my phone. It's going to be a little bit more rough and ready. I do want to get back to doing it, but I've just been so very busy at the moment. I might try and get something up before the weekend. Obviously the fights this weekend are fascinating, and then 309. What will be the? I think we're first fight of the night, so we'll be having pizza and celebrations in our, as the main event starting. So I'll try and get something out for those big fights, but it's been challenging at the moment with the amount of things in the schedule.
Have you ever been to MSG?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I have. I've been when I fought GSP, they took me to MSG to watch a basketball game.
Okay.
And to do some kind of promotional stuff. And then we saw Dave Chappelle there a few months ago, which was awesome. And we're going to go and catch maybe a Rangers game before the event, just to kind of get inside there again and do some visualization. But it's exciting to be on that card. Murder Scene Garden, as I've been calling it.
Oh, I love that. But so never to see a fight though.
No. But the BMF belt was there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there for that.
Okay.
How could I forget? Yeah, I was there for that. In fact, I was crouched down right where Masvidal walked out. I've got a cool video on my phone that I'll have to post at some point.
When you say the visualization, what do you like? What are you referring to? What happens there?
It's being in the space. I used to do this as much as I could, wherever I went. It's just very healthy, I think, to try and put yourself in that anxious feeling of fight night, to be the center of attention in a space as big and as grand and as special as Madison Square Garden. The occasion's not at all lost on Veronica. She knows how much of an honor it is to be there, and also how important it is for her to represent, given the fact that we're a street over from Henzo's. And Henzo Gracie's been so awesome with us, opening up his doors, and the whole team there have been very accommodating and helpful. So, we want to represent them well as well. And it's, just to kind of be in fight week and just rehearse the feeling of anxiety and make it as familiar as possible. So we're operating in a space where we're uncomfortable and we're functioning as highly as we can. We sparred yesterday, Veronica and I, and we did 12 5-minute rounds, and she's vibrating at a level that I've never seen her before. She's so sharp. Her reaction time is very quick. She's fluid with her combinations now, and of course, with this time spent on the mats in the blue basement, she's leveled up tremendously with her grappling. She's got a tough opponent. She's going to be very, very game, Eduardo Mora. But I fully expect Veronica to be able to finish this fight in any direction, or at least, dominate and outpoint this tough opponent to the final bell.
You're sparring with her 12 5-minute rounds?
Yeah, obviously, I'm a bit slower, and but I make up for it with pressure and with my reach.
That's incredible. 12 5-minute rounds is a lot of rounds.
It is. Mainly I'm getting my ass kicked, if I'm honest. But I like to keep moving. I've still got about 10 pounds to lose anyway. I'm bringing my weight back down again. Especially in this warm weather, I'm no good at being any heavier than about 200 pounds.
By the way, Meshuggah, what is that?
Meshuggah, they're a Swedish metal band.
Oh, okay.
I've been listening to them relentlessly recently, so I feel like it's going to be a heavy metal winter. Like, my musical tastes change and shift as the seasons change, and
interesting.
I'm in my typo negative October rust phase right now.
Sure.
And I feel like as the weather gets colder, the heavier metal starts. I might even throw in some Madball and Sick of It All, given the fact that I'm in New York. Shout out the New York hardcore scene.
Yeah, all that went over my head. I don't know who any of those people are, but in Hebrew, Meshuggah means crazy. That's a Hebrew word. Did you know that?
Is that right? I
Yeah.
was wondering. I was wondering if you were going to be able to tell me
Yes.
what it
I
was. I
thought
had a
maybe you were
feeling that
you
it
were
was
wearing
a.
it for me. I don't know. That's I didn't even know there was a band named Meshuggah. That means like crazy in Hebrew.
I mean, is it fitting?
I mean,
Am I wearing the appropriate sign on my chest?
sure.
Is that what you're saying, Aaron?
No, I don't know. Or I don't know if you're trying to tell us something, or are they a crazy band? Is that why?
Oh yes. Oh,
Okay. Well,
absolutely. They
then
are.
it
I mean,
works.
if you've never heard of Meshuggah before, make sure you check them out on YouTube. There's an incredible live show that they did in Donington, which is not too far away from where I live in the UK, and it is them playing their most recent album, which is just a masterpiece. I mean, it's a symphony of heavy metal. It's very, very unusual. It keeps an unusual rhythm. So it's not like a you can't smash your head to it because it's quite complex, but it's fantastic.
All right. I will check them out. I always appreciate your music recommendations. Can I get a small taste? I know you said you might do it, but Topuria Holloway, what are you thinking?
I think it's going to be a very tough couple of rounds for Max Holloway. I feel like Topuria is going to come in and he's going to try and pressure Max, especially because we know Max kind of warms into those first couple of rounds. He tends to throw a few shots and miss and get his reads, and it's third, fourth, and fifth where Max really starts to put it on people. I feel like those first couple of rounds, as long as Max can get through them all right, is going to be tough. The big overhands of Topuria when Max is up against the fence, as well as the neck attacks, of course, they're going to be incredibly dangerous. But I do feel like Max can see himself through those rounds. It wouldn't surprise me if his jab starts to kind of break down the nose a little bit of Topuria and make him uncomfortable. I don't know. I mean, I was daydreaming about it today, and I thought to myself, I could see Max surviving a couple of rounds and starting to get to him. Bloody him up a little bit, and then maybe knock him down and get one of those guillotines like he did against Cub Swanson. One of my favorite finishes by him, little wrap guillotine, stepped over into mount. I could see something like that happening. My only concern on this, obviously, is the weight of Max. I feel like he's better at 55 now. But that's to be seen. We'll see what he looks like on the scales. If he's got the cheekbones appropriate for Halloween, then I won't be feeling as good about it.
I'm starting to see those in some of the media already. You see it on his face. I don't know if you've seen him, but he is looking slightly gaunt.
It's not good, is it? It's the thriller look, as you might call it. I don't know. I feel like weight cutting is it's getting to the stage now where I think people need to realize that it affects your performance. This is why people always comment about Veronica being undersized for flyweight, but the reality is we've got the statistics. We train with Paul Reed regularly, who obviously works with Paddy and Molly, and we've got the statistics to back it up. She's in the right weight class. She's elite level when it comes to powerlifting. And, we just need fighters to realize that they want to be performing at their best. And, I feel like Max, especially fighters later in their career, like Tony Ferguson may have left it a little bit too late to move up to welterweight as well. I think the danger is that they feel like that this is their weight class, this is where they belong. And I think ultimately, eventually, your body grows to a point where you're better performing at a slightly higher weight class. So, I think if the matchmaking was better with those guys that do move up, we could get more fights out of these guys and enjoy them for a bit long. I keep talking about the Masters division. At some point, hopefully, I think we'll see it.
Okay, one last one. Khamzat Whittaker.
I wonder where Khamzat's at. I don't know whether he's 100% still. That's my concern. I know he's been experiencing a lot of health issues, and I know that can affect your training, especially because when you're training a lot, your body's producing free radicals. They're attacking your immune system, and if he's not 100%, then training is just generally going to be a bit of a drag for him. And we know how durable Whittaker is. He's a very wise individual. He's got great takedown defense. Again, it's probably going to be a rough round for Whittaker, but I do feel like if he's able to get to the end of that first round and Chimaev's not, choking him out or pinning him and ground and pounding him, I think we can start to see Whittaker start to take over in the next rounds. But I'm hopeful that we're going to see a healthy Chimaev because, he's a scary, scary individual. And I think if, we might always be talking a little bit like Magomed Sharapov. We might always be looking at him at some point thinking to ourselves, we never really saw the best of him, right? Like Magomed Sharapov, another fighter I feel like could have moved up to lightweight and been very, very impressive. He had the frame to carry it. but I just think he was limited to 3 rounds when he was cut into featherweight. But yeah, a very, very interesting fight. I think if we get Chimaev at 100%, he's going to be ferocious for a round and a half. And I think if Whittaker can get through that with his wisdom and his takedown defense, then he'll start to take over.
You're a gent, Dan. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on. Congrats on a great event. And you probably were watching, but congrats on the big win, Nottingham Forest yesterday. I'm sure you guys were watching. You were locked in over Crystal Palace. Yeah?
I was getting photograph updates from my father. He was there at the Trent End taking photographs and sending them to me.
One day I would like to say hello to him there in person at the City Ground. That's a goal of mine. So yes, it's an exciting time. Appreciate you very much, and good luck in the last few weeks of training for Veronica's fight at MSG. Delighted for you guys. What an opportunity, and wishing her the best as well.
Thank you, man. We appreciate it. We're very, very fortunate, and it's always a pleasure talking to you, my friend.
Thank you. Same here. There he is, the Outlaw. Thanks for watching this video. Hey, before you go, do me a favor, hit that sub button, give us a thumbs up, hit the little bell thingy as well. Leave us a nice comment or two. We appreciate you all very much.